So Gus asks, what games do you play on the ISS? Hey Gus, that's a great question. So of course, this is where we live and work, and we have to have some downtime. So we do have a few games that we play occasionally. One game that we came up with spontaneously is we found kind of a rubber elastic band, and we were using it to shoot back and forth in here. And you scored a goal if you made it through the hatch. We only really played that one time. I think the game that we play the most is to see if you can come through the hatch doing flips without hitting the ceiling, the overhead or the deck, and make it through the next hatch and go through the hatch without hitting any structure. I can show you the beginning of that, but I'll run into the camera if I try and make it all the way through. But there's variations of this. You can do it where it's two hands pushing yourself through, or there's actually a variation where it's just using your feet. So I got a pretty good trajectory going here, and I might even make it through all the way to the hatch, but not without hitting the camera first. So we'll stop it right there. But it's a lot of fun. Okay, the next question is from Maddie. And what should a 7th grader do to become an astronaut and maybe go to Mars someday? It's a great question, Maddie. You know, I think it's never too early to think about what your goals are and what you want to do when you grow up. I think it's important to have fun, obviously, but if you have a goal in mind, you want to become an astronaut and maybe be that first person to step foot on Mars. It's something that it's probably good to be thinking about right now. The most important things that you can be doing right now are just doing well in school, really paying attention in math and science. Those disciplines, science, technology, engineering, and math, I like to say that is the language of spaceflight, and you need to be fluent in it. So study those things, and then as you get older, you know, figure out where you want to go to school, what you want to study in school. And the importance of what you study is not so important as really just doing well in it. You know, in my class we have pilots, we have engineers, we have doctors, we have an infectious disease researcher. So there's no one path to becoming an astronaut. There are some common threads, and that is that all of those jobs have some math or engineering or science involved with them. And so it's probably important to be involved in one of those types of jobs, but really figure it out what it is that you're interested in, what you have a passion for, and that thing, that passion will help you do a great job. You'll enjoy what you're doing and you'll do a great job at it. And I think that's what people in the astronaut office are really looking for. So thanks for the great question. Okay, the next question is from Will. And Will asks, can you describe what it was like during your rocket launch? Hey Will, yeah, that was an amazing ride, and something that I'll never forget. You know, we spend a lot of time in the simulator. We have a simulator capsule. Really, the interior looks almost identical to what it is that we ride in. We wear our spacesuits in there occasionally for training. And so sitting in the capsule before launch actually felt very familiar. We had done that, you know, hundreds of times. What was different was the waiting for all the things that we had to wait for the fuel to finish loading, all of the various checks and leak checks, things that we kind of pretend happen when we're in the simulator. So the waiting, that took a while. And then also just the atmosphere, of course, was a little bit different. Everybody was very excited. We were anticipating launch. And then, of course, as launch came closer, things were very different. Started to hear umbilicals coming away from the rocket, started to hear valves close. And then, of course, once we got to the terminal countdown, we felt the engine rumble. You could feel that in your back even more than you could hear it. And then when we lifted off, it was actually a very gradual onset of G-forces. You could just steadily feel those. And then just that deep rumble in your body as the rocket's ascending, and then little bursts as the corrective engines are correcting the trajectory of the rocket, hearing those. But in general, it was a very smooth ride. The most memorable parts are staging, when the first stage and the second stage come away, because there's basically just an abrupt stop in the acceleration, so you get thrown forward a little bit, and then the rocket engines start kicking in a little bit, and you get pulled back into your seat. And at the very end, very exciting, is the onset of weightlessness or microgravity. And it's not completely obvious because you're strapped in, but your pencil starts to float on its lanyard, and your pages aren't pushed down. And so that's an amazing ride. Thanks for the question. Okay, next question is from Andrew. What does the ISS smell like? Andrew, Andrew, that's an interesting question. It's actually a very good question. When you first get up here, people say that space has this smell of kind of a burnt metal almost, and I have to say that when I first got into the space station, I smelled that. I could smell that in the station's atmosphere. That quickly fades, and I don't know if it's just because the Soyuz had just docked, and after opening the hatch that smell was just there, or if the space station always kind of smells like that, but you just get used to it. But regardless, in general, it smells fine up here. The air is, it's not fresh air, it's recycled, but it's very well filtered. There's no foul smell in the air. Yeah, it's a very pleasant place to live. But anytime that we go outside, or something that has been in space comes to the space station. For example, we did our spacewalks several weeks ago, and when you get back inside from a spacewalk, again, that kind of smell of burnt metal is very evident. Thank you. Okay, next question is from Caleb. And Caleb asks, what is the reentry landing procedure when you return home? Hey Caleb, so in terms of reentry and landing, I'm about to find that out. We're about 2 weeks from landing. I'm very excited. It's been an amazing experience up here for the past a little over 4 months. But I'm very excited to get back to my wife and kids. So the procedure is basically we have all of our stuff packed up. The stuff that we've used up here will go down, for the most part, will go down in cargo vehicles, a Dragon cargo vehicle later on. We will take a few things with us, but it's kind of weird. It's like going camping, but just showing up, all your stuff is already at the campsite, and when it's time to leave, you just hop in the car and somebody else is going to take care of the luggage. But we do take some things down with us. We have some scientific samples, blood and water samples, and those sorts of things that we're going to take down to the scientists that are waiting for them. We put on our spacesuits. We'll go get into the Soyuz vehicle. We'll close the hatch. And then we have to do a number of leak checks to make sure that the space station hatch is secure, that our hatch is secure. And that takes about 2.5 hours from the time that we close the hatch to the time that we actually depart the space station. And then we're in orbit. About an hour later, we will fire our retro rocket. And then about an hour after that, we will be landing on the Earth. So once we fire that retro burn, it slows us down. We dip into the atmosphere. The atmosphere starts to slow us down even more. When we get to a certain point, our parachutes will come out, and that becomes very dynamic. The spacecraft kind of spins and jerks around quite a bit. And then when we get closer to the ground, about a meter off the ground, these small soft landing rockets fire, and then we land on the ground in the plains of Kazakhstan. And that'll be on December 11th. So it'll be morning time in the US, and hopefully you all will be able to watch. Thank you. Okay, the next question is from Colin. How do astronauts take a shower in space? Colin, that's a great question. Back in Skylab, in the United States' first space station, back in the early 70s, they actually built a shower to see how that would work. And it was essentially there was a disc on the ground, you stood in that and you pulled this plastic tube curtain up, and you had a hose with kind of a little squirt gun on it. And then you used that to dispense water and shower in this tube. And they discovered that it really honestly just kind of made a big mess. It took longer to clean up afterwards than it did to bathe. And so what we do here on the space station is essentially we'll get a drink bag. I'll tell you what, I'll go grab a drink bag. I'll go grab one of our towels real quick. So we do have washcloths and regular towels up here, but this is one of our hygiene towels. And so it's just a kind of a towel packed in a silver wrapper. It's got a little nozzle on here that interfaces with our water dispenser. So the same nozzle that we have on our drink bags to get drinks, but essentially just plug this in and then dispense about 200 milliliters of hot water in there, and that hydrates that towel. Then we just rip it open, and we have a wet towel, a wet washcloth essentially, that we use to clean off. So it's not the most refreshing shower, but you know what? It's amazing how quickly you get used to that, and so it keeps us very clean up here, and there really aren't any issues. But I am looking forward to taking a real shower here in a couple of weeks. So Aiden asks, what has been the most difficult thing to adjust to when you've been in space? Thanks for that question, Aiden. You know, it's a completely different environment up here, just in terms of where things are stowed. You've got you know, when you're looking for stuff, you've got 4 surfaces to look for things, not just, you know, on the ground or in desks and drawers. Getting used to being able to see daylight and night outside the windows 16 times during a day. All of those things are a little bit different. I think all of those require some getting used to. But the most obvious thing, I think, is weightlessness. And not just for the moving around, because honestly it takes about, I think, 6 weeks to really get good at moving around in the space station. It's a lot of fun to float, but I think when you first get up here, you find that you're actually kind of dangerous floating around. Kimia and I were knocking things off the walls constantly, running into things, going too fast and crashing into the ends of modules. So that takes some getting used to. But weightlessness also makes it really difficult to organize things. So anytime you know, we have a work bag, for instance, and if you go into this bag, you know, everything immediately wants to kind of start floating out. And so to count stuff and keep track of stuff, and you know, if you're supposed to do an inventory of a bag, to bring everything out and then put it all back in and get it in there without it all floating away can actually be very difficult. And so we typically have Velcro on just about everything, and you very rarely will see somebody working up here just kind of let something float. If you take something out of a bag, we always either Velcro it to something, or we have bungees all over the floor, and so, or we stick stuff under the bungees, because otherwise, if you just kind of let something float and you don't pay attention to it for even 30 seconds, it's amazing. Stuff just disappears, and again, you don't have just one surface. You don't look at the ground to see where it fell. You've got to look on all 4 planes of the space station to look for something, because it just floats away. There are some places in the space station where lost stuff likes to go. Stuff will collect on the vents, and there are a couple of vents where we really tend to find things. And then for some reason, stuff that we lose goes, and we'll find it when we're working out on our resistance exercise machine. We'll be working out and the thing will just be floating there. I have no idea how that works, but it does. So thanks for that question, Aiden. So Lucy asks, how has your emergency medicine background prepared you for your training and mission? Thanks, Lucy. You're absolutely right. I trained as an emergency medicine doctor, and thankfully I've not had to use that training up here on the space station. I'm certainly glad that I have those skills should anyone need that help, but I'm glad not to have to use the medical skills. But there are a lot of other things that I learned as an emergency medicine doctor that I think have served me really well as an astronaut. You know, when working in the emergency department, kind of working in a high intensity situation, you're working as a part of a team. There's a lot of knowledge and skills that you have had to accumulated over the time of your training, and you have to put them to work, often in very stressful environments, and environments that can result in life and death. And so I think you have to be a good communicator as a physician, both with your patients and with other doctors. And you have to have trust in the members of your team as well. You have to trust that they know what they're doing, because especially up here on the space station, you know, we really all rely on each other, and we rely on the folks that are helping to take care of us who are working on the ground. So I think a lot of the skills that I learned as an emergency medicine doctor, as a doctor in general, have really helped me both in training for this mission and training and actually working up here on the International Space Station. Well, I want to thank you for submitting questions, and I'm sorry it's taken so long to answer them. I know that we started this back in August and September during the reunion, but I sure appreciate your patience, and I hope that you've enjoyed spending a little bit of time with me up here on the International Space Station. I wish you all the best. I encourage you to think about what it is that you want to do for a job, for a career, to establish those goals and to start working towards them, whether it's to be a teacher, a lawyer, a pilot, or an astronaut. Really think about what it is that you want to do and start working towards that every day. You know, if you want to become an astronaut, I highly encourage it. This is an amazing place to live and work, and I feel very privileged to have had this opportunity. And I look forward to hearing about maybe one of you being the first human to visit and step foot on Mars. So I wish you all the best at Astra, and I hope to see you back on Earth.